what I've learned is that like, everyone's really different. And in general, this is kind of my opinion with a lot of things, not just work. I mean, also like government, is that as long as there's no force involved, which is why I've kind of become very anti forcing people into the office if it's not necessary, then people make it work for them. They can make their work and business life balance work for them. So they know I have these meetings at these times and I have these deliverables and I'll make it.
Hey everybody, welcome to Leading from Afar, a podcast by remote leaders for remote leaders, aimed at sharing knowledge and experience to help make remote awesome within your companies. I'm Scott Markovitz. I was the first hire at Envision and helped build the foundations of the company, from marketing, sales, product, operations, and pretty much everything between. I've also mentored and consulted with hundreds of early stage startups, including a bunch of remote ones. Each episode, we'll speak about hot topics, trends, and the future of remote work. We'll also interview some super smart leaders at all levels of remote teams and introduce you to new tools that can help you succeed as a remote leader. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. In this episode, I'm joined by Yoel Israel, who is the CEO of Wadi Digital. We connected a couple months back over a post of mine about the topic of remote team engagement. And during our conversation we had before the show, it became apparent that he wasn't actually a fan of remote work all the time. In reality, he really used to hate the idea of remote work and thought it was actually a terrible idea. Then came the pandemic, and there was a transformation. So in this episode, I'm excited to be able to dig in with Yoel on what caused that transformation from being a remote work hater to a remote work lover, and how it's been going. We spoke about engagement, the needs of extroverts, leaders feeling the need for control, and shifting to a mindset of results, and what leaders that are still hesitant about remote work can do to fall in love with remote. Lift off. Yoel, how are you doing today? Thank you for joining.
Doing excellent, man. Yeah, I'm really excited for this conversation.
Wishing you a very healthy and happy birthday. How was the birthday yesterday?
It was perfect. It couldn't have been anything I wanted more.
Awesome.
Friends, family, pecan pie, and beer, so it was nice.
That's a great combination. Sounds like a great combination. I love it.
It wasn't at the same time.
All right.
Something about alcohol and pecan pie. I don't know. It's like
an opportunity for growth for next year.
There you go.
Yeah. When we first connected, so very interested in this call today. When we connected a few weeks back, I think the idea of the conversation was going to be around engagement and fun that your team does now that you're remote. And as we had the conversation and we're kind of nailing through ideas, you kind of admitted that pre-pandemic you were, and maybe part of the pandemic, you were admittedly very passionately against remote work and a anti-remoter, what we'll call it. And through the experience of the pandemic and now post, you've kind of reformed yourself and you've gotten on the away from the dark side to be very for and seeing the value of remote. So I thought, the biggest value from the conversation that we could have is, I think, really walking through that entire experience, starting from pre-pandemic and digging into the reasons why and things that you had been feeling about remote work. When the pandemic hit, kind of process what had changed, what you had done, and now post-pandemic, and really kind of dive into that if that's cool for you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I don't say radical, but I was very anti-remote work. I was anti-remote as much as I was very much pro everyone else should be in person. And this is one of those things that I was very strongly about. I felt strongly about, and a big part of it. I mean, this is hindsight, so I wish I could know what exactly I was thinking and feeling then. But a big part of it is my personality. I'm very extroverted. I love people. And being able to have the people around me was important to me. I felt as someone who's an extrovert and needed that socializing or needed that. I assumed that's something people need because you assume what's important and a priority for you, for other people. I didn't even have that thought process. I was like, yeah, of course, I'm more productive. Or I'm more this and that. I was telling me these things. Some of them were true. Some of them were half truths about it. But what now looking back, I have people on my team that are saying they're so happy that first they also were thinking of going in person in between the peaks when we thought coronavirus was behind us in the beginning of the vaccine drive. we were talking about maybe getting an office again, including team members of mine that are like 45 minutes south of from where I am, and then those people also decided, what, let's keep it remote. They like being with their family, their spouses, their kids. They like to be able to do like I just did. I jumped for 7 minutes to take a quick shower right before this call.
Yep.
That you get to do these things and you could be just as productive. And you don't have to feel that your work is taking away from your personal life, which is a big thing that I've learned, is that when you force someone to go to the office, you feel as long as I'm in the office, I'm not with my kids, I'm not with my spouse,
Yep.
I'm not with anything. So therefore, work has become an obstacle to the most important relationships in your life.
Yep.
And some of the most important things that you need to get done, including errands. So
Yeah.
I remember when I used to work at Xerox in Philly, I'd make sure to get my eye doctor's appointment during work hours.
Yep.
You know what I mean? This and that, you know what I mean? Like while I'm at the office, I
Yep.
jump out and do all that. So when I'm home, I can spend it with my family or my friends or my neighbors, my kids.
Yep.
And now it's not like that. Now you can do when and what, and sometimes in the evenings you have to work and whatnot. And
Sure.
so then you can trade off, taking off a long lunch with your spouse and make up the work later and all of that. And at the end of the day, it's just once you introduce a high level of trust, which was forced on me. Again, this wasn't a decision. It was coronavirus.
Sure.
And you find that everyone's far more productive and everyone's far more reliable.
Yeah, so there's a few things in there we're going to unpack. Before, usually the way we start, and I apologize for not starting off with this, is maybe introduce yourself a little bit and tell everybody a little bit about Wadi Digital, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, sure. So those know, my name is Yoel Israel. I'm the founder of Wadi Digital. I do digital marketing for technology companies, particularly lead generation and helping leads become opportunities. We have 3 main departments for now, soon to be a 4th. We're doing paid acquisition, paid media, PPC, lead generation. The second is SEO, and then the third is influencer marketing. And we dominate in all 3 of them. We're the agency people go to when they're sick of their current agency not working.
Excellent. So we'll start off with the first point that you started, of you being an extrovert. I also very much of an extrovert. When I was in the office, once, twice a day, went to Starbucks with a colleague or a friend, once every hour. Maybe it's ADD, maybe it was just that extrovert in me had to get up, had to go to somebody's desk, have a schmooze for 5-10 minutes, was very much the water cooler person. And I definitely felt, I certainly admit it, when I went remote, I missed those opportunities because without a physical space, there was no Starbucks and there was no water cooler and there was no desks to go up to. And for me, it was something that in the beginning, nothing really happened and I wasn't able to recreate those moments. But after a time, I said, okay, well, I need these moments very much as an extrovert. So in my last couple of years at Envision, I recreated those moments by every day opening Slack to list of people who are online, kind of closing my eyes, scrolling down, clicking on one person, and would DM you and say, hey, Yoel, hi, I'm Scott, I'm in Israel. You want to jump on a 5-minute Zoom call? Just for that opportunity to see a face, hear a voice, meet somebody new on the team that I wouldn't have met, and really kind of that serendipitous random person and then a kind of random time. And people that I did it with absolutely loved it. After 1 or 2 times, they would start messaging me, hey, when are we doing these? I would call them 5-minute FaceTimes. People loved it. I loved it. And this was the biggest thing that I've heard through the pandemic from companies of this is why the main reason why people want to go back to an office or have some type of office is for that camaraderie, that team building, that team engagement, where I think it's the problem was, and we're going to dive into this, it's recreating those experiences. So in the last couple of months, I launched I'll call it a side project called Spontaneously, which works to recreate those little serendipitous moments. Very much focused on you, the individual. So when it's a good time for you, you literally click one button, you kind of raise your hand saying, yes, I want to meet somebody for an 8-minute coffee. We automatically pair you with someone else who at that time also puts their hand up. So there's no pre-coordination. It's not at a scheduled time. It's the opportunities to do it every day, just like you went for a coffee break every single day. And you meet somebody new for kind of a short conversation. Just, again, it's not a 30-minute block. It's not a 15-minute block. It's just as long as you would have a conversation with someone in the hallway or someone in the coffee machine, really designed. So I think that was, continues to be a big problem across many things of companies not understanding, hey, this is the future of work. So how do you redesign or recreate all these types of things, whether it's engagement, whether it's onboarding, whether it's mentoring for a new environment. So I definitely feel that pain that you did, and decided, okay, there has to be a way to recreate that for a remote and virtual world.
Yeah, but I don't think it could be recreated, because I think what you're doing is, in a way, like, nothing can be recreated like walking by someone at the water cooler, or some things you hate, like being stuck in an elevator with someone you don't want to talk to, or in the men's room washing your hands at the same time.
Sure.
Something, but the ones but most of them that we do enjoy, those encounters, they happen by chance.
Yep.
And as opposed to saying, okay, now I am ready to speak for 5 minutes, like, you know what, maybe I just need to, like, a break for 5 minutes instead. I don't want to talk to someone. Maybe not, like, you know what I mean? Or I don't know who I'm going to be paired with. Like, I think there's a little challenge there. I feel like we're trying to have our cake and eat it too, and we're getting a bite of the cake. But nothing's like the spontaneity of bumping into someone, as opposed to having to choose to carve out that time, or the next 8 minutes I'm going to speak to a stranger, and then there's anxiety involved. Who the hell's a stranger?
It's again, there's nothing like in real life experience, but again, it's trying to mirror that experience as much as you can in the digital side. So sitting in your office at 10 o'clock in the morning, decide, hey, I need a cup of coffee now. I need a break. I need whatever. So I decide at 10 o'clock to get up from my desk and go towards the coffee machine. And I happen to bump into some random person at the coffee machine or in the hallway. So I've selected myself at this time. Yes, I'm getting up. I'm physically getting up and taking an action, and now walking to the coffee machine, where I now bump into somebody who I didn't know, or maybe somebody that I did know, and making a cup of coffee, sitting around. How's it going? How are you? Nice to meet you. How was the game? How was Game of Thrones? Short, no conversation, and then going back to the day. But I think it's really that, there's other tools that are out there that are trying to bridge this gap and really be focused in the specific area, but it's once every other week or once a week, and it's pre-coordinated, and it's at a time that the company tells you. And that's never how it worked. When you're in office, it's like you decided when to get up. You decided when you need a break from work. You decided, hey, I need a cup of coffee now. So I think that's the idea of the project that I had launched, was really you, the individual, decide when's a good time for you. And we'll send you a message, hey, is now good? If it's not, hey, no problem. We'll try again later. And if it is, then again, it's not opening Zoom and calendar invites and links and knocking on doors. It's just literally one click and everything happens. So the effort, just like when you bumped into someone in the water cooler, it didn't take effort to start a conversation. It didn't start, okay, is now a good time? Hey, do you want to have a conversation now? Do you not? It's very much of, hey, you're here, I'm here. How's it going? Quick conversation, move on. Yeah. So kind of pushing the conversation, I would love to maybe dig in a little bit more of, maybe we'll dive in and we'll go back there. Your point of, I think this is the biggest thing that's coming out of the last 2 years. I think for the last 150 years, when we moved from an agricultural based economy and work to factories and then offices, we went from from work to life, to working to live, to living to work. And I think what this pandemic has done is now flipping that script back to the original way, where it really should be, where you're working to live. That my life is not all about work. Because previously, as you said, work was my day. If I woke up early, I had like a little bookmark in the morning. I'd get up and I'd do a run. I'd do an exercise at like 6 o'clock in the morning before I had to get out there to train. I'd work, and then I'd come home and I have, an hour, 2 hours of family time with the kids, eat dinner, go to bed, rinse and repeat. And now what we really learned through this experience is that the two worlds can kind of coexist, and they work well with each other. That your life and your work are all managed to happen at the same time. You don't have to block out time. It doesn't have to be, okay, well, this is work time, this is lifetime. And I think that's the biggest thing, whether we're talking about location, so for remote work, or we're talking about in the US of all the issues with people who are not coming back to the workforce. People aren't able to get Teslas because there's no people working at the docks and no one wanting to drive trucks. And yes, part of it's because of salary, but I think the bigger part is people realize that, hey, we could drive an Uber 3-4 hours in the morning, then we could spend our afternoon and our lunchtime with our spouse, doing art, going surfing, living our life and enjoying the things that we want. And then later in the evening, going back and driving the Uber again and make as much money or more money. But the real crux there is like, hey, I get to live my life during the day. It's, again, getting away from the bookmarked life surrounded by the work. And I think that's the biggest revolution that's really coming, is being able to merge those two worlds back together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely feel that way. I don't think that you can I don't think you can merge them. Also, what I've learned is one of the big things I've learned is I noted on is that everyone's really different. So, like,
Yeah,
I might be an extrovert, introvert. Like, there are people that always hated going to work, and there was me. I
100%.
always enjoyed going to work, right?
100%.
And then there's people have newborns, and they get to now breastfeed their baby as when they're 3 4 months, they don't have to pump or put them on formula.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And leave with someone else or something for them to feed when they would like to continue to have that bond. And of course, it's best for the baby to have, with the mother's milk. There are a lot of great advantages like that, and or if you have a baby at home and you're the father, you want to be around and you want to help,
sure.
or your spouse is also working and she needs a break. So I think what I've learned is that like everyone's really different.
Yeah,
And in general, this is kind of my opinion with a lot of things, not just work. I mean, also like government, is that as long as there's no force involved, which is why I've kind of become very anti and why forcing people into the office if it's not necessary.
yeah,
Then people make it work for them.
sure.
They can make their work and business life balance work for them. They know I have to have these meetings at these times and I have these deliverables and I'll make it.
Yeah,
And okay, and I trust you. And if you
yeah,
don't, you're fired. But
yeah,
but everyone, that high level of trust, people rise to the occasion. I think people are more productive. Not to mention, of course, just the time saved on the commute. Not
sure.
to mention, and then of those hours in the office itself, how much gets done because of the small talk, because of the extended
Yeah,
lunch and the going out and that, and blah blah blah. And so I don't know. I think everyone's really different.
yeah,
And I find that as long as the less rules you have, kind of like the less you try to force someone into a certain system, what you'll get is more productivity, more enjoyment, more collaboration,
yeah,
from people you work with. And suddenly it'll become a lot more enjoyable. And
100%.
also, by the way, another side note is that you're talking about the small talk at the water cooler, so to speak. The small talk you got before you get on a call. So like, you and I were to get on here, or I were to get on with a coworker that I speak to all
Yeah,
the time, that I would see every day. Because you're in your home and maybe your kids are around or there's whatever, or a pile of dirty laundry
yeah,
around you, the small talk is no longer bullshit about the weather and the football game.
yeah,
The small talk is human. Like I actually know. Oh, I see someone's home. Oh, they don't feel well. Oh, hey, the next day, hey, how's that person feeling? And the next time
yeah,
in the beginning, and so that's totally different. So actually, your small talk are actually real conversations. They're
yeah,
human conversations, not filling the awkward space and awkward time.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Conversation.
yeah,
Because you'd probably heard the weather reference when I went to an office, like several times a day. It's
yeah.
like, seem to not get bored of it.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. This is something that I've been saying certainly a lot through the last 2 years. It's working from home and these calls through Zoom, which everyone happens to hate, allows you to get to know your colleagues far better and far deeper than you ever
Correct.
knew them in the office. Because again, in the office, you're you're Yoel, the marketer. You're Scott, you're the product guy, and that's all I knew about you. But now when I see you and I see like your family, your kids, your cat, your books behind the wall, like, oh yeah, the Peter Thiel book, yeah, I read that, or I'm reading that now.
Right, exactly.
Like just that environment that's around you, you get to know so much more about that person that you never come up with in the office, and really creates and crafts more opportunities to connect with somebody when you see them as a human being, right? They're not an employee, they're not a coworker, they're a person, they're a parent, they're a spouse, they're an animal lover, they're a wine connoisseur, they're a whatever it may be. And that's something, again, that people never got while in the office. And it's something, I think that's one of the beautiful things that came through this. But I want to kind of go back, if it's okay, and dig in more outside of the idea of you being an introvert and needing those conversations throughout the day. Like, what made you feel that being in the office was the right way to work, that remote could never replicate, or remote was missing, that would not allow a company to be successful in a remote environment?
Well, it's not about the company being successful. Just as an employee, that's what I want. I mean, even now, some people say, I love the remote life. I would love to come in once or twice a week. It's more about it's about getting out of the house. It's not even
Yeah.
about productivity.
Sure.
It's about like being forced out of the house. At the end of the day, like you need a reason to do something that's difficult to do. You know what I mean? No one runs for fun, right?
Sure.
They might say the dopamine's secondary, keeps them going next time. But that first step out of the door, you're doing it for exercise, for mental health, for physical health,
Yeah.
or, you know, whatever it is. And I find that's kind of the same way about going to the office. They know it's good for them. So they want it worked into the routine, ideally by company policy, because if it's not, if it's on their own, we'll never do it,
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of that's kind of how I see I feel like about people wanting to go in, and me it was the same. I just wanted to see people, I wanted to feel people, I wanted to joke around about things. Now,
Yeah.
what I find interesting, and I think this is about me, and I'm gonna go assume it's other people. I was anti-remote work, but I never did remote work
Yeah.
before Corona. And I wonder how many other people that are anti-remote work were never participated.
Yeah.
I was so happy with I was fine with the status quo.
Yeah.
And you mentioned people don't want to go back now, especially younger people. They're like, screw this commute. I think that's the big one for them, really.
Yep.
It's like, what? Why? Why? I've been just
Yeah.
productive. Screw this commute.
Yep.
And they got used to it. And now I got to wake up and get dressed nicer than I needed to, and
Yep.
you know, and all that. You know, roll out of bed, whatever,
Yep.
and get going. It's like, and that whole commute's such a pain in the ass with, you know, and being next to people you don't want to be with on a train or on a bus or
Indeed.
in traffic, God forbid. So
Yeah.
I mean, I liked seeing people. That's what it was for me.
Sure.
And as a business owner, I felt I was in control.
Yeah.
So I'm not coming as an employee. I'm coming as a business owner for
Yeah.
19 people. I mean, before the Corona, we were like 5. But I mean, I felt like I'm in control. I know what's going on. I'm informed. If I need something done, I can turn around and ask someone to do it.
So that's, I think, the points where like focusing on being a boss versus the employee. But you said, you kind of mentioned, this is something that's been said a million times, was that feeling of control. What was it specifically in the office that you felt you had control on people? Was it, again, I mean, there's research that comes out. Even last week, there was a research that said in the office, the average, or probably even maybe not, 4 hours of work were actually get done out of an 8-hour day. So the fact that somebody was sitting there doing this for 8 hours, science and the research says that 4 out of those hours were spent on YouTube and Facebook and whatever it may be, not doing work. So like, what was that feeling of control that you had before the pandemic started? That was like, I have this in the office, and in theory, if it was remote, I would not have this.
Well, I thought people would be more productive in the office because we'd actually, I know I would get whatever, 9 hours of work out of you, you know, minus lunch and breaks, whatever, that of productivity, right? I would assume that but in the end of the day, people are going to screw around if they want to anyway. What I've learned when you go remote is that there's a higher level of trust, and it's no longer about hours working. It's about showing up to your meetings, meet your deliverables, be reliable, right? If something's assigned to you, take care of it. And so then what happens is my metric from how can I get the most value and growth out of the limited hours they have before they go home and not working.
Yeah.
I've gone from that, and also I know what's going on, to trusting two things: trusting them, that it's no longer about hours, but trust that they'll get the work done, and trust their professionalism, and trust that I hired them for a reason. I think that's the big one. And then the other thing is you just trust people with their with their lives, not just that they do things, that things are running, that the business is running as it should be. It made me step back and not micromanage, not because I didn't trust them and them time for themselves at work. I was always cool with it. I always have been. It's been my personality. I've had a great boss and I've had a bad boss, so I know what it's like for both ends. But people I think there's a level of trust there that's been lacking. And once you go remote, you're forced that trust that they'll get the work done, that they'll do what they need to. And okay, I don't care. They check Facebook, great. I've accepted it as opposed to trying to fight it. But I've also accepted, and so have they, that you have deadlines, you have deliverables, you have meetings, you will be there, right? Everything that, and you are a reliable person.
Yep.
I'm going to treat you like an adult who's independent, who's
100%.
is an independent spirit. And that was probably the hardest part for me, was to do that.
Yeah, that's certainly the future of work, is going that direction. I know there's a lot of movement now towards like the 4-day work week. I'm not so positive, whatever, in the
Yeah.
middle of it. I'm a believer. I think really where remote work started in the beginning, and I'm coming back 10 years when I joined Envision, which we were one of the first all remote companies, and we were trying to hire. You could never put as like a nice have or a requirement remote work experience, because it didn't exist. There were only 2 or 3 companies that were doing it at the time. But the most successful people that we had that joined were freelancers, because they came from that mentality of, I have a project, I have deadlines, I don't have the boss looking over my shoulder, like looking at me all the time. I don't have to say in like daily updates, hey, I need to produce this by this time, and that's all I need to do. And I think we're coming back. The wheel is now turning around and coming back, where that's where the future work. It's not. I don't think it's this 4-day or 3-day or 5-day, whatever it is. It's not even like the 9 to 5, which Salesforce is trying to abolish. It's really like you said, hey, I need this content piece launched by Tuesday at 3:00. So between now and Tuesday at 3:00, I honestly don't care what you do. I hope you do things that are enriching and make you happy, make you productive and things like that. But what I, in essence, care about, especially as a boss, is Tuesday at 3:00, content piece launched. And I think that's certainly where we're moving.
And when we were in the office, just to interrupt you, you might have had
Yeah.
that, but it's also do that and fucking be here and be away from your family and suffer in commute and do
Yep.
that. And I don't trust you, and I'm looking over your shoulder and I'm monitoring your
Yep.
software and then. Oh, and Tuesday at 3:00, I need the content piece up. I was
Yeah.
like, what? Like at the end of the day, I
Yeah.
care about,
Tuesday, 3
until
o'clock.
then, I'm just trying to manage them and their time, and it's just like it's ridiculous. I don't like it being done to me, and
Yeah.
I don't enjoy doing it to other people. And
Yeah.
what I've learned is no one's good at it at all. You can't
Exactly.
force people into things. It's counterproductive
Yeah.
by every measure.
Yeah. So now let's dive into the actual process of procedure. So pre-pandemic, we'll talk about early March last year. You loved the office, believed in the office because it gave you that engagement, that kind of company culture and the control. Pandemic hits, crap hits the fan. The government says everyone has to work from home. Talk about the first week. Let's start off with week 1, then we'll dive into month 1 and then year 1. Like, what happened that first week? You understand, okay, we're here for we don't know how exactly long. What happened? What was it like? What changes did you make? What changes did you make around that engagement, those conversations? Did you recreate those? Did you say, okay, every day, let's have a 5-minute call with the whole team? Hi, how's everybody doing? Everybody's safe? Did you have those, daily kind of check-ins in the morning, your daily stand-up in the morning, daily stand-up in the evening, kind of to get that piece of control back? Like, talk to us about what happened the first week.
Well, the first week I lost half of my clients because there was no economy and just shit in my pants.
Fair enough.
And not lay anyone off. That was it. But outside of me losing my mind because the government decided to shut everything down, I had calls originally like twice a day. We had calls in the morning at 9:00, or maybe even 8:30, I think, and then we had another call at like 2. And I was reeling back from being someone who likes to be in control.
Yeah.
When I hired last January, so like 9 months into the pandemic, I hired a manager to help me build my ads team, who's excellent. His name is Gilad. And he was like, he was like, we don't need calls twice a day. We can do once a day.
Yeah.
And I was like, but what about this? How do things are going on? It was like, well, if you have a good first call and we're using a management software that's good enough, we shouldn't need it. And I was like, but what about, trying to hold on to however much, of course, speaking in hindsight, control to make sure things are being done when, and if you don't know how to do something in the middle of the day, how do I know you're going to ask me? So let's like meet up. And then I was like, all right. I mean, and he led it. The goal was he took over the department, which he did to his credit. And so what we have now, we have a 9:00 call, 10 to 15 minutes with the whole company. So it was like 19 of us, 18, 19 of us. And there's no talk at all about work. It's just hanging out, making jokes, making fun of each other, and talking about maybe some things, are in the news or food or whatever. And it's like really good, fun talk. Yeah. And then at 9:15 we break out to each team, then has their morning meetings where here's what we're going on, here's what the clients, here's what we need to prioritize, They usually last until 10:30, so it's like an hour, 15 minutes. And projects are assigned in Monday.com, and then they move on, and that's it. And then if needed, we have WhatsApp groups. We have a company WhatsApp group, and then each department has a WhatsApp group.
Yep.
And people help each other. So we have that Google Meet link that we use every day at 9:15 for the ads team and 9:15 for the SEO and influencer marketing. And then we just say, join the Scrum call. So if I have a question, I need help. Hey, how do I optimize this? I'm having trouble with the A/B testing, something with the reporting. I need some technical help. So it's like, we put in the WhatsApp group. It's like, I need help with this. Can someone join Scrum? And someone says, sure. And they go on a Google Meet, kind of like you and I are talking right now virtually. They get on, they share screens, and they got it solved a couple minutes, and they get off.
Yeah.
So you have that advantage also now that our team's larger, because our advertising team's like 8 people, 9 people.
Yeah.
So we're able to do that. It didn't always used to be that way. And so that's kind of how it is now. So like, I am unlikely to speak. It's 10:30 in the morning. I'm not going to speak to my team for the rest of the day.
Yep.
Unless it's like specifically needed. I have a sales call. So with one of my SEO team will be on a sales call. Other than that, I think I have a check-in with my influencer marketing team because we pushed it off to the afternoon to do optimization on our ads. Other than that, I don't have any conversations with anyone on my team for the rest of the day. So so I can do work.
Yeah. So 2 points I'm going to bring out of that. Number one is the decision to drop one of the daily stand-ups came from employee feedback, which is something I've been ranting about for a long time.
It wasn't even feedback. He just insisted. He was like, it's not necessary. And I was like, okay. And then I pushed back. I gave a devil's advocate, a counter advantage. And I'm like, I'm not in control anymore. I hired him to lead the team. I trust him. I gave my opinion, and they shut up, and he was right. And he has, and I think this is probably for those looking to hire, in my opinion, the most underrated, and I told Gilad this, who leads our ads team, and we have a lot of team leaders, and they're all excellent, is you need to have talent and skills in being able to manage a remote team. Yep. If you can manage a team remotely, which is not easy, and you have to build a culture in order to be able to do that, of level of trust and all that.
Yeah,
I feel like that's probably one of the most underrated skills
100%.
that you're going to need in the future.
And that's why this podcast exists. It started at the beginning of the year. I understood. I've been doing this for 10 years. I've built and led and scaled remote companies and teams. And there isn't very much out there in the ways of learning. As you said, you kind of went into this without a choice. And most companies just took what they did in the office and did it remotely, or tried to replace, the seeing you and the kind of the overview of you to having 2 times a day stand-ups, when that's obviously not the way that remote works. Remote is very intentional, but there isn't really much out there. And again, that's the point of this podcast.
Well, what do you mean remote is very intentional? What do you mean by that?
Everything that happens in a remote environment has to be very intentional, because nothing really happens by itself. So the way you engage,
you mean organically, like walking to someone's thing?
Correct. So whether it's engagement, whether it's mentoring, whether it's learning development, whether it's whatever, like somebody has to have that agenda that says, okay, let me do this. And kind of in that idea of the side project that I launched was, hey, I had the desire, I had the intention to every day go find somebody to talk to. So it's always been possible with Zoom or Google Meet. You could always do that without new tools, but there aren't very many people who are like me, who have that passion, who have the drive, and have the intentionality that every day or whenever they desire to talk to someone, have a conversation, to go find some random person to talk to. And that's what I think where the tools came into place. But I think going back to that point was, you took feedback, you took a push within the organization saying, hey, we don't need this, and you dropped it. And that's something that's been cleared for me for 2 years of employees are giving feedback. Hey, 30% plus of employees are saying, I'm never coming back to the office. I'll quit if you don't let me work remotely. Another 40% are saying, I require flexibility. But yet the executives of the team are saying, okay, they're totally not listening to this feedback. They're spending millions of dollars on trying to gather the feedback, and they're taking it and they're making decisions that are counter what the employees are saying. But the beautiful thing that you said was, yes, initially you had some friction. You're like, oh, I don't know why this and why that. But you understood from their perspective, the value proposition. Yes, if their person saying, hey, we could get this done without having the secondary meeting in the day, then okay, let's go with it. So I certainly give you a lot of kudos for that. What else may have gone into that process of dropping? Was it more kind of collaboration? You said you used Monday. Was it maybe more collaboration on Monday, or some other tools that really helped you make that decision and allowed that change to be successful? Because again, hopefully people who are listening to this kind of get inspiration saying, okay, let's make some changes. But still, I guess we're not going to be 100% confident. So what Like, what was it that you saw as you changed that policy that you knew, okay, yeah, stuff's getting done. Oh, I see, conversations happening in Monday or conversations happening in WhatsApp. Like, what were those pieces that you saw that helped you solidify that idea? Okay, yes, this was a good decision to drop this second meeting.
I mean, the proof is in the pudding. At the end of the day, I hired someone who I thought was absolutely perfect to be able to build and lead our very successful advertising team. He's demonstrated that very clearly. And either the choice was, Yoel, do you want to lead this team? Or did you want him to lead this team? And I wanted him to lead the team. I'm paying him well to do it. He has the talent, and that's why I hired him. And I also work closely with my business coach, who's remote, who's in North Jersey, who's very super pro remote, and working on me being able to move out of that managerial role for a few reasons. One is that I have someone that's better at it. Two, I don't like it. I suck at it, so we were working on it. So I had the support of a business coach to help me let go. And so I needed even his help to hand over leading client calls from me to him and all of that. It was hard for me to let go of that too. I brought in outside help. I mean, right. So, and I recommend that if there are any employers out there, get a pro remote business coach to help
100%.
you and show you so you can make the right hires, ask the right questions in interviews, ask the right questions for referrals so you have the right people in the right chairs. You know what I mean? How to build things out culturally so you still have like culture and you still do things fun. How and if and when to meet people in person and what you should do and what shouldn't be, like what kind of company policies that you're going to have, whether it's official or unofficial or implied, And so these are things you kind of need to work on if you want to have a working machine remotely. And the business is far more, in my opinion, far more efficient when we're working remotely because you ask it to be done, it gets done. And I'm not using any brain capital today at all, and neither is any of our team leaders, that is this task going to be done by a certain time. We know it's going to be done, or if they need a delay, they'll be asked well enough in advance, or they have a question, they'll have enough time to be able to ask they have a question if they'll need some help. But that doesn't take up any real estate in anyone's mind. It's high trust, and that's it. And so I found that it was made it so much easier. But it's a hard thing to do. You need to bring out outside help. I finally started exercising more seriously because I brought in a personal trainer a few months ago. So I started finally lifting weights because he comes to my house at 7 a.m.
Yep.
Like I told you before I got on, last night was my birthday, so I was drinking, and then while drinking last night at 11:30, I remember I had my trainer coming at 7. I swear to you, if I didn't have a trainer coming, I would not have worked out this morning. You know what I mean? And I was figuring out how to cancel on him when I woke up at 6 a.m. I was like, later, but I did it because I had that accountability. So you need that accountability. So don't go in it alone. If it's hard for you to go to remote, it works for others, and therefore it can work for you. Bring in an expert or consultant, maybe that can help you make that transition make the right hires, set the right policies and certain things, that it's a win-win for everyone in the company.
Yep. Maybe I would love to know a little bit more about that, because what some companies have been doing the last 6-9 months have been hiring what we'll call a head of remote or remote lead or someone who is supposed to be focused on that. I personally interviewed for a number of those roles. What I've found through those interview experiences and who they've ended up hiring is they've tended to go with someone more junior with more transactional experience who's, I guess, really more focused on tools. Like, what tools should we be bringing in versus someone who's much more high level, strategic, kind of on the same level as we'll call it as the VP of people, who is thinking very much strategically. How do we shift the operations? How do we shift the culture of the business? How do we shift the way that we do all the things that we do to be supportive in the future of work, in remote work, versus saying, okay, no, maybe we should be thinking about asynchronous communication. What tools do we do? What use that? Or we should be thinking about company culture and pulse surveys. What tools have used for that? So for the non-remote company, for the remote first companies who are having a head of remote, that's a totally different story. But these companies that have transitioned to being remote companies during the pandemic, at least what I've seen, and certainly I could be corrected, it's much more of, again, a transactional versus a strategic role, and somebody more tools versus operations. So I would love to hear maybe a little bit more about the coach that you have and what you've done, again, what that thinking was. How do we change how we run the business? Not just, okay, maybe before we weren't using Monday.com, so now we had to use Monday.com, or we added another tool in there just to kind of replace something, but the whole mind shift of changing the exact whole way of how we're running our business.
Yeah, if you're thinking, if your prime concern is the tools, or prime concern, I shouldn't say that. If your focus ongoing is the tools for, let's say, hiring someone for remote work, then again, I think your focus is wrong. You're not focusing on trust. You have low trust.
Yep.
So are we monitoring our employees, how much they're working? I read this article, this terrible manager that, like, if their mouse doesn't move or something, they think they're offline. So this woman invented, like, the simple thing that, like, when she goes she can go to the fucking bathroom, or try to fold some laundry in the middle of the day, or feed her toddler. You know what I mean? Well, during a pandemic, for God's sake. So her mouse, she puts her mouse on it and it moves it every 10 seconds. It like vibrates and it moves.
I saw that.
I'm like people will, like, we will outsmart you. Like, I mean, like, people people that are like pro liberty and individualism, like we will outsmart the people that are trying to control us. So I think the problem is, based on the word thing, is that there's too much of a focus really on these tools and not enough focus on culture, and you're not enough focus on your business. If you cared about, like, what are your business objectives, and then you need to work with someone, how do I reach my business objectives in a remote way, right? Sure. What do I need to do? I think that's better than how can I try to replicate as much of the pros of in-person work to get that to remote. That's the wrong way. You should try to rebuild how would I rebuild this organization from the ground up, knowing that I'm building a remote organization, and how would the business processes be? Who are the people that I would hire? What are the rules? What do they need to have? What kind of experience do they need to have? What kind of personality do they need to have? And then I have some other things like they need to have guaranteed. They need to be responsible for a certain amount of download and upload internet at their house. Because I can't send that over there. They need their own room for an office. Like, these are things, instead of just trying to replicate. You know what I mean? Like, make the right hires to create that culture of work and collaboration. As opposed to how can I maintain the control I had when we were in person and bring that to remote. I think that people have it totally backwards.
Yeah, I love it. Pulling on a little bit towards the future, you mentioned obviously that you have one meeting in the morning now that starts off with the team. We'll get into that next. And then all the teams break out for kind of like the daily stand-up. Do you see your team, especially now that you have much more of that trust, moving more towards an asynchronous model where the updates are not in a live synchronous meeting, it's long form documentation? It seems like you use WhatsApp versus maybe Slack or maybe some tool that kind of you get to do your daily stand up in a tool and share that within the team. So it doesn't matter what time you do it. Maybe let's say as long as it's delivered by this time, that everyone kind of gets to see it. And if they have questions, it's more collaboration like on WhatsApp or Slack. You see yourself going more in an asynchronous direction? Not
intentionally, but what we've learned is as they become more talented, they're more skilled, and our talent is onboarded better, we have skipped the 9:15 meetings where we actually review client stuff, and things just may be assigned to you through Monday.com, and that's kind of it in you. So we do have that once in a while that call is canceled or postponed to the afternoon. That happens every every 7-8 business days, maybe. I don't know, something like that. But in general, moving to an 8, no, I don't think so. There are still pros of having videos and speaking to people. There will be people that will just want to give me my task list and my thing. But one of the hardest parts, honestly, of going remote is training. Is that training people remotely is not the same as them sitting next to you and us sharing a screen, like, actually, and I can point to it's just not, it's not the same. That I will definitely give, that's a huge con for remote. But having those opportunities for people to ask questions and train, like forced, because we didn't do that in person. Hey, every day, 9:15 to 10:30, we're going to go over the work you're doing with the client and address all of your questions about the work you did yesterday and everything. Now it's forced, expected, and explicit. And so there's actually more learning that way, and things that would come up in a way that wouldn't happen in person. The training itself is harder, but it happens more. It's forced, right? Like you said, like some things need to be forced in a way. So I don't see us moving that direction. I'm not anti it. in a sense. I could see it working for better for other organizations, but for us, where it's very, very, very high skill services that we provide for top
Yep.
technology companies, we really need, I think we need that kind of like morning get up again to at least to be able to
Sure.
address questions.
Okay.
And also the other thing is, because let's say if someone had a question about how to do something, right, and
Yep.
they would drop in the WhatsApp group and they would join the Scrum call and someone would show them. It's like that corny, like what the teachers used to say. You're like, this thing is stupid questions. If you have a question, there's probably other people in the class that have the same question
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you
yeah.
try to ask. And that is true. So
Yep.
when you have that team meeting, whether in the morning as opposed to that one-on-one, someone has a question, there's someone else that probably doesn't know how to do that either, or didn't
Yeah.
know how to do it as fast or as efficient or something, or didn't even know that was a solution, how to ask, right? They didn't know what they don't know. So there is that added value of people joining together on a meeting and a team. So no,
Yeah.
I don't see us moving that way, but we do see times that it's not needed every day, that we can skip here and there
Sure.
as necessary.
Awesome. Two final questions. The first is, seemingly in the last year, you've 4x'd your team. I think when we started the conversation, you said you had 5 people, now you have about 19. Talk to everybody about how you onboarded those people. Again, because in theory, I'm assuming the 5 people you had when the pandemic started, you obviously onboarded them in person, and we're in your office, and those other 14 weren't. So talk to us how you were able to onboard them remotely, how you enabled them to hit the ground running, because it seems, again, from your conversations, they're all rock stars. They're all doing absolutely amazing work. So it went from not knowing them, onboarding them remotely. Again, onboarding is supposed to be very much focused on helping you hit the ground running as best as you can, as quickly as you can. So maybe dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. So the big thing is actually making sure that you're hiring the right person. That's the big mistake
Sure.
I find that a lot of people are making, is that they're hiring the wrong people. I remember when I started in business years ago, I asked one of my mentors for advice and I didn't take it, and boy, did it hit me hard. He said, only hire people that had full-time experience for a year. Meaning they went to an office. Right, this was before remote. The remote wasn't even part of
Sure.
the conversation. They know what it means to get up and work. They understand what's socially acceptable and what's not, right?
Yep.
What you are and do not, kind of what's the expectations of working in a career environment, not just a job. Like washing dishes. And so the same thing kind of like remote. You want to make sure that they have the proper experience that they can. Do they have the proper setup at home? Do they have the proper internet? Do they have what they need?
Yep.
What's their home life? Like, is their spouse out? Is their spouse in shares the same office also working remote from home?
Yep.
That's not a problem. But if both of you are doing client calls all day, that's an issue. And that's something that should be openly discussed. I understand that some countries, they might say it's illegal to ask certain these questions. You just need to find the right way to ask them, unfortunately, because if you want a remote position, you need to know that. Also, I do an insane social media check. Anyone who's like a little too passionate about politics, I don't hire, even if their politics I agree with, because it's just, they're a little bit kind of obsessive. Their mind goes there all day. It's probably a side hobby almost, right? And I also think there's a little bit of an imbalance if all you're posting is politics or things like that. And also other things. Are you like, how quickly do you checking on people's Twitter and they're like kind of get a good vibe of them before I even reach out to them and for an interview? You really want to make sure you have the right person. And then the referrals also, the references. You need to make sure you do that references really well. But we hire only in Israel, and Israel's really small, so everyone does come in for one in-person interview. I do ask that for that. I do believe in full body language and making sure that being able to have the right personality and all of that, and that we vibe, that I would like to work with you as a person and you would like to work with me. That's just as important, right? You need 100%. To make sure that they can do the work. I want to work with them and they want to work with me, and you need all 3 of those. And some of those could, if you can do it in person, great. And then after they're hired, they'll pick, I'll have their stuff here. We have a bunch of stuff. They'll pick it up I'll get a laptop and monitors ordered online, delivered to their house.
Yeah.
Oh, one big thing I do recommend for people doing remote, all of our new laptops now for our employees, we're paying for 3 years on-site support. So they don't have to go and lose their laptop, that they'll show up to your house and fix your laptop.
That's a good point.
Which has been huge, I just have to say.
Yeah.
The lost time and their headache. And I don't have time, too much work to do to go take it in and lose it for a day. And it's like, come and work in the office, like, what do you do? Now it's like, have online support. Make them coffee at your house for an hour and you're gone, it's fixed. It's been like so worth the money. I just want to say that's one of those like small things that I wish I knew at the beginning. I just thought it was worth throwing in. And then so then the onboarding and then so the training is tough. So we make sure they have some experience, at least like a course or something that they passed.
Yep.
And of course, we'll test their their copywriting, or how they write,
Sure.
how they do some optimization, depending on their experience. And we'll do that testing in person. So during an in-person interview, because we can really see, and I can ask them, why did you do that? Why not that? I want to kind of see what they're doing, not just send, and see how long it takes them also, because that's a big component, is make sure you can get to reach deadlines, right? If I give you 3 days to do something, I want to make sure that you have enough time to, if you have several tasks, you get them all done. But if I give you an assignment as someone I want to hire, get this back to me in 3 days, you don't know who can have helped them, and you don't know if it took them if it took them 20 hours of work, which should have been 3 hours, even if they did an excellent job. You're like, but that's not productive. That took you 20 hours. How are you going to deal with many parallel deadlines at once? You're not going to be productive. So, you got to do the things in person that you can do. And then when we onboard, we have a woman on our team who's amazing, who does a lot of the training, and then we support with online training, and then they'll do the advertising and some marketing for like Wadi Digital, not our clients. So I can kind of, so they screw up, it's fine. They're not fucking up our clients, they're fucking up our ads, and things like that. So that's kind of just how we onboard. And then we get together once a month, which is a big component. And I try to organize the get together shortly after someone's been onboarded, like, within 2 weeks of them starting.
Yep. Amazing. Yeah, so that was going to cover a question. I guess we've run out of time, unfortunately, but obviously you do the daily chit-chat conversation and doing the monthly get-togethers, which again focuses on that team engagement, team building. But again, because we're out of time, for folks that want to get a hold of you, follow you, company, looking for outsourced no marketing services, how do people get a hold of you, find you, etc.?
Yeah, sure. I mean, really LinkedIn, Yoel Israel, or wadidigital.com. But send me a message if you need, some advertising, lead generation, if you need opportunities, SEO or influencer marketing. We'd love to help. We have a great team working remotely, independently, with a very high level of skill and trust that can properly serve you. So people you're working with aren't, they're very, very, very high, top quality people.
Excellent. So Yoel, thank you so much for joining today. I appreciate the conversation and sharing the insights of where you were and how you grew and where you're going. And until the next episode, have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks again, everybody, for tuning into today's episode of Leading from Afar. If you enjoyed the podcast, you can learn more on our website, leadingfromafar.com, and subscribe to the podcast in your favorite app. This podcast is all about you, the remote leaders. We'd love to hear from you with your feedback or ideas for future topics and remote leaders we should be speaking with.